We might be a small island, but we've got a big history. Everywhere you stand, there are worlds beneath your feet. And so every year, hundreds of archaeologists across Britain go looking for more clues into our story. Who lived here, when and how.
So there's a blade wound here, here, so he's being attacked from all angles.
Archaeology is a complex jigsaw puzzle, drawing everything together from skeletons to swords, temples to treasure.
He's biting his shield.
Biting his shield, yeah.
From Orkney to Devon, we're joining this year's quest on sea, land and air. We share all of the questions and find some of the answers as we join the teams in the field, digging for Britain. These islands that we call the British Isles have been inhabited on and off for hundreds of thousands of years. And for most of that time, the early communities here were living through what we now know as the Stone Age. But who were these people? What were their lives really like? And when did the foundations of our modern society emerge? With no written records to draw on, it is only through archaeology that we can hope to gain an insight into the lives of our ancient ancestors. Tonight, I'll be coming face to face with Stone Age people on Orkney.
The wealth of secrets that we could learn from this is quite incredible.
Learning some disturbing truths about Britain's Ice Age hunters.
We have clear proof of cannibalism in this site.
And visiting the Channel Islands on the trail of some misunderstood early humans.
Nature just doesn't allow a creature that isn't perfectly fit to its environment to thrive and exist.
We'll be travelling backwards in time on a journey spanning 100,000 years of human prehistory to uncover the changing story of the first inhabitants of Britain. Last summer, I visited a dig at the links of Noltland on the small Orkney island of Westray. On a windswept beach, archaeologists were uncovering a Neolithic farmstead and what has been described as our earliest domestic goddess, the Westray wifey. This year, I'm back on Orkney to visit another Neolithic site that is revealing more important clues about these early farmers and their complex beliefs. This is Banks Farm on the island of South Ronaldsay, where just last year some construction work up by the farmhouse revealed a previously undisturbed Neolithic tomb. This wasn't the first time an important Neolithic tomb had been found on Orkney. In 1958, a local farmer uncovered the now world-famous Tomb of the Eagles. Inside it were 16,000 human bones, as well as 725 bird bones, many of which were from white-tailed sea eagles. The unearthing of another Neolithic tomb on Orkney is enormously significant, a once-in-a-generation event. Hamish Mowat made a startling discovery right outside his front door.
There's a hole the size of my fist, so and you got the torch and shine in, you can see the rock face. Well, at that point, you're looking into something that hasn't seen the light of day for thousands of years, I expect. Yeah. So your old heart starts to pound a bit then, and you think, well, you can't leave it at that point. And then when I shined the torch, this eerie white object with two holes was sort of looking back at me. Yeah. So I sort of sat back. I looked again, yes, that's definitely a skull.
What a remarkable thing to find. I mean, it's just, you know, metres away from your house.
Well, this is really basically 10 metres outside the door.
Yeah. The discovery by Hamish that this mysterious mound right on his doorstep contained human remains gave archaeologists the opportunity to excavate undisturbed chambers inside a Neolithic tomb. And I'm off now to meet the archaeologist who led the excavations. Did you have to move in and dig it really quickly because it had been opened up to the elements, effectively?
Yeah, well, as soon as we realised there were human remains in the cell here, obviously the whole thing's full of water. It became apparent that we had to move fairly quickly because we weren't quite sure how the conditions had changed within the tomb.
Because part of the tomb had been unwittingly damaged by previous building work, water was now seeping in, and the team faced a race against time to rescue the archaeology hidden inside. Dan kept a unique video diary of the unfolding dig.
Day 2 of the excavations at Banks, and we haven't had the weather on our side today. It's been pretty rainy, we've had gale force winds, so we're hoping to carry on tomorrow with the idea of removing the top slab of one of the cells, with the idea of excavating the human remains that may be in there.
The team soon realised that this was a sizable tomb, consisting of a central passageway with 5 separate cells or chambers leading off it.
We've been digging our section into the passage here. This is the east cell, with very restricted access into here, and there's a skull sitting just there in the top, so we're trying to get access to that through here.
Once the team had removed the layers of mud and clay, they were able to access the chambers and the human remains inside them.
The skull just straight back.
The team's first impression was that the skulls had been placed as a closing offering when the tomb was finally sealed. It's a captivating glimpse of these people's burial rituals going back some 5,000 years. As well as the skulls, there were hundreds of other human bones in the chambers, all mixed together in a jumbled mass. Excavating them was a slow and delicate process. Each precious fragment was catalogued and carefully removed for further study.
Can we actually get down and have a look inside the tomb itself?
Yeah, let's do that.
We can open this chamber.
Yeah, we could have a look in. This is pretty similar to how it was when we first looked in here, where sort of the bits of skull were tucked in and amongst these stones as a sort of final offering before this doorway was sealed up and the tomb was sealed off for good.
Dan, how amazing to have the opportunity to excavate something like this where you know that it's absolutely pristine.
Yeah, it's quite an amazing experience. I mean, I worked in this cell myself, and as you remove that bone, you're sort of doing that in reverse, and in that sense, you kind of get the sense of how that person put that bone there in the first place, sort of 5,000 years ago. The wealth of secrets that we could learn from this is quite incredible.
The construction work has completely changed the environment of this tomb. It's had its entire roof taken off, so it's now exposed to the elements in a way that for the last 5,000 years it never has been before. And this means that the archaeology is under threat. The human remains in here are under threat. If the archaeologists don't act fast, then there may be very little left to excavate.
Having recovered the bones, the team moved them to their lab in Kirkwall to begin the analysis. They would also be able to compare this new discovery with the famous Tomb of the Eagles. It lies a little over a mile from Banks' tomb and has revealed some disturbing truths about Neolithic society. Recent research has shown that around a quarter of the skulls from the Tomb of the Eagles show clear signs of violence. Dan and the team want to answer 2 key questions. What can they learn about burial rituals from these bones? And does comparing Banks' tomb with the Tomb of the Eagles tell us anything new?
Have you got an idea of how many individuals might be represented?
So far it's about 14. You know, we are looking at quite a number of bones, and if you imagine there's 5 cells there, you could times that by, well, very roughly, by 5.
So this could be a communal burial place for a whole community. I'm really surprised at how well preserved the bones are. And this is, you know, damage on this one, but, you know, still the actual skull is pretty much intact.
It is, yeah, and that's quite an interesting skull in itself, because that was placed as a sort of closing offering into the east cell before the passageway was finally sealed off.
So this would have been one of the last people to be buried in the tomb? I think skulls are amazing because you know, you are looking at somebody's face, aren't you?
It's only early days, but the team are starting to build up a picture of these communal burial rituals.
At this stage in the analysis, do you have any idea of whether these bones were placed in the grave as bones? Were they defleshed? Were they just a jumble of bones? Or do you think whole bodies were placed in there?
You know, are we looking at bodies being taken in and perhaps maybe put into the central chamber or the passage and being allowed to decompose, and then at some point they're then moved into various cells at certain times, and then they become intermingled by later activity and become this sort of mass of bones, this mass of the ancestors?
Yeah. Got any evidence of violence, for instance?
I mean, Tomb of the Eagles, there's recent research has shown that there is quite a lot of evidence for this sort of thing. There's less so here at Banks so far, but we haven't actually got that many cranium fragments.
Oh, and that looks like it might have been a little fracture there. There's a definite dent in the top of that person's skull, but it just turn it in very carefully. Yeah, there's no evidence of it penetrating through to the inner surface of the skull there. Do you think the Tomb of the Eagles is an interesting comparison? Is it contemporary?
I would say that they're probably broadly contemporary, and obviously we await radiocarbon dates. You're certainly looking at perhaps communities in that area over several hundreds of years expressing their sort of identity in death through these monuments.
The preliminary work here has thrown up some fascinating questions. Did something occur in this Neolithic society that made them abandon one tomb and construct a new one? Or were there two rival populations here, each with their own competing ancestor culture? Dan and his team are in the first year of what promises to be the most thorough examination of a British Neolithic tomb ever undertaken.
We're getting an amazingly detailed picture emerging of rituals and beliefs that seem very alien to us today, very strange. Just imagine how different it was back then, when you would have been laying your dead to rest in a communal tomb and probably pushing aside the bones, even the rotting bodies of more distant ancestors. It seems very odd indeed, I think, to us today, and it's a ritual, it's a belief system which has disappeared from memory, was never recorded in history, and the only chance we have of trying to understand it is through archaeological investigation.
The community buried at Banks' tomb were amongst the first farmers in Britain, and they've left permanent evidence of their lives behind. But moving back beyond the Neolithic, our ancestors lived a more mobile, nomadic existence during what's known as the Mesolithic.
Now, finding evidence of the transition from the Mesolithic to the Neolithic has proved very elusive. But a community archaeology group in Scotland may have discovered a site which could shed light on this gap in our knowledge.
Over the past 20 years, a dedicated group of volunteer archaeologists have been excavating sites around the Dare Valley in Scotland. They're looking for evidence of a missing link in archaeology. The Dare Valley sits in an area of land between the rivers Clyde and Tweed. Hidden in this remote valley are clues about a huge leap in our ancestors' technology and lifestyles.
Okay, how are we doing? Everybody okay?
Leading the research is Tam Ward.
The reason that we're on this site is because the hill has been ploughed up for new forest, and when that happens, the plough exposes the archaeological sites for us. So all we really need to do is walk up and down the furrows and literally find what's lying about.
Dense scatters of flint are churned up by the forestry ploughs. These flints provide clues that archaeology is lurking beneath the peat.
If we found one of these bags on an entire site, we would think we were lucky. And we are finding masses and masses of material in here. It's so exciting.
Just below the peat is the original ground level, which is covered in evidence of our ancestors' lives. The style of tools suggests that this is a Mesolithic site, and so Tam and his team are the first people to touch these flints in over 6,000 years. The volunteers give up their weekends to unearth fragments of their ancient ancestors' lives.
We've been doing this for a number of years now, and it sort of becomes a bit of an addiction after a while.
We'll dig anywhere, anything, any opportunity.
Well, what always strikes me is this is such an unremarkable valley. You would drive past it and never give it a second thought, and yet there's 10,000 years of history here that just is still waiting for somebody to come along and ruin their knees and their back digging it up.
Tam and his team have found over 250 archaeological sites in this one valley alone, and there could be many more waiting to be explored. Today, the team has exposed a large area, and they work inwards from the outer edges, digging down just a few inches. The sheer volume of flint suggests that this was a campsite, an incredibly rare thing to find. Tam has been finding typically Mesolithic styles of tools.
We have a microlith. This is what they were manufacturing most of the time.
Microliths were part of a distinctive Mesolithic technology. These tiny flint blades were embedded into the shafts of arrows and harpoons to increase their effectiveness. They date to an era when people relied on hunting and gathering. They hadn't yet begun to farm the land or to husband animals. Here in the Dare Valley, Tam and his team think they've made a significant discovery because they've found both Mesolithic and later Neolithic technologies on the same site.
We've begun to find Neolithic evidence, and this is in the form of this pottery. Now, this is the earliest pottery to be used anywhere in Europe, and these pots were quite large pots, and these indicate people were settled on the landscape as opposed to travelling through it, because these pots do not travel. That can only mean one thing: the very first farmers. Now, the most interesting thing about that is, are these the same people who were former hunter-gatherers?
The use of pottery signifies a radical change in people's lifestyles. It goes hand in hand with settlement. Tam has also found these distinctive smaller Mesolithic and larger Neolithic scrapers at the same sites in the same levels. As farming became more important, even simple tools like these were changing. And beautiful Neolithic arrowheads like this begin to replace the Mesolithic microliths. The tools of the hunt were also changing.
We think this is the transition between the two earliest cultures, the Mesolithic and the Neolithic, and if that's correct, then that's a really major discovery.
This valley is yielding clues about a crucial transition in human history. It marks the end of a nomadic culture that had been around for millennia and saw the birth of a structured society that we would recognise today. But travelling backwards to the beginning of the Mesolithic, another site is yielding extraordinary evidence of life going back some 11,000 years.
At the tail end of the Ice Age, Britain was thawing out and the climate was warming up, and people were beginning to change the way they lived in this newly hospitable landscape. They were making the transition from being nomadic hunter-gatherers to becoming more settled.
The most important Mesolithic site in Britain was discovered just after the Second World War at Carr in North Yorkshire. This remarkable site is still reshaping our view of people at this time. Since 2004, York and Manchester universities have been digging there.
I've come to York University to meet a team who've been working on Carr for over a decade and to find out why all is not well at Britain's most famous Mesolithic site.
Over the last 60 years, tens of thousands of artefacts have been found at Carr. And because of the lack of oxygen in the peat, the preservation was remarkable. What emerged were not just stone tools, but organic remains. Leading the post-excavation work is Dr. Nikki Milner.
So these are some of your recent finds from Carr.
That's right, yeah. This is a digging stick. It's actually made of wood, and it looks a bit like a normal branch of a tree, but actually when you look at it, it has actually been carefully carved, and you've got this amazing point at the end which would have been used for digging. But it's incredible when you think that it's actually about 10,000 years old.
It's fantastic because you can really start to build up a picture of how these people lived, how they survived, what they were doing.
I mean, we've never found anything like this before.
Yeah.
Somebody was actually holding this and, yes, digging for their food.
It's amazing to have something like this surviving. But this wasn't the only remarkable thing the team discovered.
The really exciting thing about our recent finds is the a structure that was found. It had a big hollow in the ground, and it had post holes around it, and this is the earliest kind of structure, a bit like a house, I suppose, that we know of in Britain.
These small holes are a hugely significant discovery. It's the earliest evidence that these people weren't just living in temporary camps, but were settling down and building more permanent structures, and not just houses.
And then, as well as that, we also have evidence of a platform made out of worked planks, which goes out into the lake.
So a jetty?
Like a jetty, but it goes about 30 metres across the edge of the lake.
Really? Oh, wow.
Really important because it's the earliest evidence of carpentry we have in Europe.
Preserved in the peat for over 10,000 years is the first evidence of our ancestors working in wood on a massive scale.
If they're building structures like that, they're staying in that place for a while, aren't they? They're not just passing through.
It seems to be overturning all our expectations of what people were like at this time. I think we have to accept that they're a lot more sophisticated than we thought they were.
The unique preservation at Carr provides an astonishing wealth of detail about our ancestors' everyday lives.
What about these? These are lovely.
These are called barb points, and if you look at them carefully, they've been carved to have these little harpoon-like points.
What are they made of?
They're made of red deer antler.
They're really beautifully made, aren't they?
They are.
Quite
They're very
evil
delicate.
looking, actually. Those little bobs. It's so lovely to have a site where you've got organic remains preserved, because you start to see more of the culture and more of the technology. You're not just relying on the stone tools. You're seeing wooden tools. You're seeing antler little harpoons. They're lovely.
There's a whole lost world trapped beneath the peat, and clear evidence of people settling in their environment in a way that hasn't been seen before. Ben Elliott, one of the team here at York, has been using some of the finds to discover more about the skills of these Mesolithic people.
You're not just looking at artefacts which have been dug up, are you?
No, as part of my kind of own personal research, I've been conducting some experimental archaeology and sort of having a go at recreating some of the types of artefact we find at Carr.
So can we have a go?
Yes, we can do, yes. The sort of first thing that people are doing at Carr are making these kind of long ways grooves. And they use their flint blades to sort of slowly incise. And you can see the material starts to come away, especially when it's wet as a kind of soggy sawdust.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, can I have a go?
Yeah, of course you can.
Get a feel for just how soft it is.
Mm-hmm.
And they say this is exactly what they would have been doing, is that using flint tools like this. I have to say, I am getting to the point where I just want a power tool.
After just a few minutes, I'm really getting a sense of how Ben's research is unlocking the skill and artistry represented in the Carr tools.
Yeah, it is coming off.
Once you have sort of two parallel grooves defined along the length of the antler, you then have this kind of strip.
So what are they doing with these strips once they've removed them?
Well, once the
Starting
strip
to
is
carve
removed,
them?
yeah, they start to carve them using flint tools. And this, as you can see, again, it's quite a gradual process. But you can sort of, using your kind of flint flakes, you can sort of gradually sort of sharpen off and create quite a sort of sharp point to the tips. So a pretty formidable weapon, really. Yeah,
Do you mind if I have a go? Is it all right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just want to get an idea of how...
You have to hold the blade in a certain way so you can get the right kind of That's the stuff.
There we go.
It makes a nice sound as well when you get it right.
Yeah. So doing this experimental archaeology, is that helping you to then interpret the material that you're finding on site?
Absolutely. And doing these experiments has given me a sense of the kind of experience of what life might have been like at the site.
Nearly 200 of these barbed antler points have been found at Star Carr, 97% of those found in the whole of Britain.
Star Carr is one of the most important Stone Age sites in Britain, and it's given archaeologists an amazing opportunity to try to understand what was happening here in the Mesolithic. But when they were excavating recently, they started to make finds which were worrying, not because of the deep past, but because of what might happen at Star Carr in the future.
Something drastic has happened, and it's threatening the very existence of this incredibly important site.
So although things were preserved in the ground for 10,000 years, over the last 60 years or so, it's taken a turn for the worse. So this is actually something that was excavated in 1985.
And what is it? It's the skull of a large animal? Yeah, so the base of the skull is here. It's been completely, well, almost pancaked, yeah.
So this was excavated about 25 years ago. But in the last few years, we've got some really serious problems. These we excavated in 2007.
So that's some antler from the original excavations on the site?
Yeah.
So when would that have been excavated?
1950.
1950.
So sort of 60 years on. It's just like leather.
Oh my goodness.
It has actually been conserved, but it's...
Isn't that strange? It's like an old leathery banana skin.
And in fact, we have very little antler and bone compared with the 1950s. I can show you what those look like. I think you're going to be quite shocked. And
oh my goodness,
it's
completely soft.
It's like a piece of rubber. And this
That is so strange.
Another piece here.
So this is bone, that's almost jelly, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is bone that has been completely demineralised.
It was when we found this that we started doing all the tests and realised that it's extremely acidic. It's basically, we've been told by our specialists, it's a bit like Carr battery acid.
So why is it so acidic? I mean, that's worse than it just being a peat bog.
It's basically because the water table has fallen dramatically.
Right.
That's let oxygen into the deposits, and that's created a chemical reaction and created sulfuric acid.
So what does the future hold for this site?
Well, luckily we have got 5 more years funding from the European Research Council, so we will be going back.
I was quite taken aback to see the state of preservation of that bone and antler from the recent excavations at Star Carr. And if that level of deterioration continues at the site, then much of the precious evidence there will be lost forever. So that means it's fantastic news that the archaeologists have secured funding to go back and excavate and rescue this archaeology from one of Britain's most important Mesolithic sites.
Stepping back even further in time, whilst Britain was still in the grip of the Ice Age, we arrive in the Paleolithic, or Old Stone Age. Around 14,000 years ago, as Britain began to thaw, modern humans started to colonise this newly hospitable landscape.
Our Paleolithic ancestors left only very subtle traces of their lives behind. They didn't live in houses, so what we're trying to spot is evidence of their campsites. Imagine trying to find a camp that's thousands of years old. It takes a keen eye and a fair bit of detective work.
At the end of the Ice Age, the expanse of land between Britain and France was a vast and rich hunting ground known as the La Manche Plain. As the ice melted away and the sea level rose, the English Channel swallowed up this land. But there are a few areas of this lost landscape still with us, and the Channel Island of Jersey is one of them.
I'm on my way to a site that is so new that you won't find any mention of it in archaeological textbooks or journals. It's been called Les Varines, after the road that leads there.
This discovery was made by local man Peter Bowie.
Peter, you found this site. How on earth did you come across it?
Well, it was purely an accidental find. I was running through this field one evening. Fortunately, the field had just been lifted of its Jersey new potatoes.
Right.
So it was all nice fresh soil.
Yeah.
And lying on the surface, I just found a flint core.
So did you know what it was, or did you just think, well, that looks like it might be prehistoric and it looks like perhaps a stone tool?
I knew it was prehistoric. I know what a piece of work flint looks like.
Yeah.
When I got home and spoke to my wife, who is curator of archaeology, she confirmed it was a flint core.
Very useful to have an archaeologist at home when you find things out running.
Oh, it certainly is.
Last year, following up on Peter's discovery, a team of archaeologists excavated a few small test pits, which seemed to indicate that this might be an ancient Paleolithic site. Many other famous sites from this era have been found in caves, but this is an open field, so it is an incredibly rare find. These people certainly weren't the caricature cavemen of popular culture. Leading the dig here at Leverine is Dr. Chantal Connellar.
What we've got here is a campsite that dates to about 14,000 years ago. We don't know the scale of it yet. I mean, there seems to be huge amounts of material coming out from the plough soil. So it may be people who live by hunting and gathering who moved across quite large areas but camped here in this very spot.
A Paleolithic site looks very different from later archaeology, where there are walls and other features to follow. This means Chantal and her students need to meticulously plot every stone tool that they find. And the soil here is rock hard, so the going is tough.
So have you found anything of interest yet, or is this very early stages?
We've been going for nearly 2 weeks now, but now we're getting quite dense scatters. So all these little flags show a single bit of flint. And we're also getting quite a few tools. So this little piece of flint here, we think is a part of a scraping tool. Probably for working hide, but sometimes they're used for working wood as well. So we have maybe people gearing up for hunting expeditions or repairing their weapons, but also other activities going on as well, involving the processing of animal remains.
Last year, I visited a site of a similar age at Creswell Crags. Here, other Ice Age hunters were making beautiful art. It's clear from this site that these people weren't just cavemen. Perhaps they're better described as tent people. They might have used caves for art and ritual, but above all, they were nomadic hunters ranging over large areas. The tools found at Leverine are the real treasure of the Stone Age, and they're all the archaeologists have to go on. From these simple bits of flint, they can build a compelling picture of life here 14,000 years ago.
So shall I wash that?
Yeah.
So, very technologically advanced washing equipment.
That's very nice.
What is it?
This is actually a little tool called a burin, or an engraver. You see this triangular point here?
Yeah.
And these were used for working bone and antler.
So for kind of digging in for making an incision into those materials?
There's little indentations. Each of those represents an act of resharpening. So people are obviously using this tool for quite a time. So they used it, it became blunt, and then they resharpened it.
So they're taking off little slivers of flint.
Yeah.
And what's this larger one that you washed?
This is part of a blade. You can feel that edge there is very sharp, so would easily cut through reindeer hide or reindeer skin.
These stone tools are very different from those found at later sites like Carr and the Dare Valley. This Paleolithic technology was designed for the specialised hunting of migrating animals like reindeer or horse.
I think when you start actually understanding how all these little tiny bits of stone might have been used, you're looking at quite a sophisticated technology, and you start to think, well, actually these people were very much like us.
But also they seem to have a very different worldview from us. So the way they treat their dead, as at Goff's Cave, the way they decorate caves and some of their tools with these animals obviously have great meaning to them. So though in some ways they seem like us, in other ways I think they would have seemed very alien.
It's amazing to be finding these little traces of them, isn't it?
It's very exciting just because it is so old, and it's really nice to be the first person for 14,000 years to be touching these tools.
This is an incredibly exciting site because it seems that underneath the plough soil we have intact archaeology and the remains of a hunter-gatherer camp from the very end of the Ice Age. This is such an ephemeral thing to find, something that is much more likely to disappear than be preserved. So we have the opportunity here to gain some precious insights into the world of those pioneering hunter-gatherers who were recolonising northern Europe after the ice sheets receded. But as well as finding clues about these Ice Age hunters' everyday lives, archaeologists have also uncovered evidence that shows that these people were very different from us. Finds from a cave in Cheddar Gorge are now held in London's Natural History Museum. Rescue excavations at Goff's Cave between 1987 and 1992 revealed evidence of hunter-gatherers using the cave and human remains. Last year, a team of experts from the Natural History Museum re-examined some of those bones, and what they found was truly gruesome. 20 years ago, clues emerged that seemed to be evidence for cannibalism. The new analysis strengthens this theory. This jawbone has been deliberately broken to extract bone marrow. These people were eating their own kind. And a closer inspection of the bones has revealed something new and extraordinary.
We had the vault of the skull, or 3 skulls, which was absolutely perfectly preserved. And there was a sort of why they were saving it. We have clear proof of cannibalism in this site. So if they were going to modify the skull, it was probably to extract brain. But the way they modified it is not just to extract brain, because they would have break it in much easier way to extract it. But here, we observe a very clear process of complete defleshing.
I mean, you can almost imagine somebody peeling off the tissues and then cutting down underneath.
Exactly. Is a classic example of scalping.
So peeling like this and then cut.
All across. When we analyse the face and other parts, they are clear sign that they were going much more in detail. So they were cutting the eyes, they were cutting the cheek, they were cutting the lips.
Why would they want to do that?
We think that it was to produce a container. And I think that the simple movement of an anatomical position to put it upside down, it just tells you what it was, and it was a cup.
Even as an anatomist, as someone who has dissected human cadavers, I find it extraordinary the lengths they were going to scrupulously clean up a skull, to transform it into a cup. And this new research shows us how they were doing it, but why is another question entirely. Were they driven by hunger or by their beliefs? Was this just an elaborate funerary ritual? And whom were they eating? Their enemies or their friends and relatives? It seems strange to our modern sensibilities that our ancient ancestors would make such macabre objects. And as is so often the case, archaeology can provide us with the evidence, but not the reasons why. Before we modern humans arrived on these shores, there were other, different humans who roamed the British Isles. And there is evidence of their lives here on the Channel Island of Jersey. During colder periods of the Ice Age, the sea levels around Britain would have been significantly lower than today. The English Channel and much of the North Sea would have been dry land, and the Channel Islands would have stood out as areas of high ground in a flat landscape. I'm here to meet a team of archaeologists who are hoping to shed light on a much maligned human species, the Neanderthals. Neanderthals survived and thrived in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years through periods of major climate change, as glaciations repeatedly brought ice sheets down over northern Europe. And they were here long before we modern humans arrived on the scene.
The Neanderthals were a distinct and separate branch of the human evolutionary tree. I've arranged to meet Dr. Matt Pope of University College London, who's one of the co-directors of the project here.
Hello, Alice.
Hello.
I'm Matt.
Matt, hello.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
This is Kevin, our guide.
So we're going to go and have a look at Lacotte from the sea.
So we've got a beautiful bay, lovely blue sky, and around the corner some good archaeology.
What a fantastic way to do archaeology. I could get used to this.
Lacotte de Saint-Brelade is of international significance because it's one of the few places that Neanderthal remains have been discovered in northwest Atlantic Europe.
This is a fantastic way to view from the sea.
I mean, most people, when they look at Lacotte, they're looking at it either from the site or from the headland above. We're trying to give a different perspective here. What we're able to do here, looking at these stacks, these bit of granite sticking out, they're the remains of an entire valley system. And it's within these valley systems that the Neanderthals were almost certainly hunting and moving, following herds of mammoths, rhinoceros and other animals.
We're actually paddling over the top of a submerged Ice Age landscape, and the sea is fairly calm today, but just occasionally we get hit by the bow wave of a ferry. And then you have to be really careful about being close to reefs as white water starts breaking over them.
Matt is using kayaks to map every part of the Jersey coastline, looking for new caves and with them, new archaeology.
So Lacotte really is just the beginning.
I don't think we'll equal the size and the importance of Lacotte, but what we can do is start to fill in the gaps and try and create an entire history of occupation and periods of abandonment this side of the English Channel River for the past 500,000 years.
Travelling around the coast by kayak is a fantastic way to survey it. You can get really close. And it's great to go along with Matt and see that he's not just looking at the modern landscape of today, but imagining in his mind's eye the ancient coastline. Lacotte is such a famous site, but there may be other important archaeological sites as yet undiscovered around this coast. But for now, I want to get over there and see it up close.
Lacotte has provided us with a wealth of information about the lives of Neanderthals. Archaeologists have been digging here for over 100 years. And in the 1960s, even Prince Charles took part in the excavations. Matt and his team suspected that Lacotte might have more to reveal. So this year, they're trying to establish if there's any untouched archaeology here. They're clearing away backfill debris from previous excavations to expose the original sediments. Because of the tides, they can only work here for a few hours at a time, and it's a dangerous environment, hence the hard hats.
Hello. What an amazing site.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Now, how much of this is original archaeology and how much of it is the backfill from previous excavations?
Well, when we first came here, we were under the impression that most of this was material left over from previous excavations. The picture that we're starting to build up, and from Martin Bates's excavations here, is that in fact large parts of this site remain unexcavated and intact.
It's really exciting that there is pristine archaeology here. And a few tantalising fragments have been emerging from the exploratory dig.
So, Becky, these are some of the finds which have been coming out today.
Yeah, there's a couple of bits Bully's just pulled out. It's here.
Oh, that's nice. Is that flint?
It is. They're both flint. They're quite heavily damaged around these edges here.
Oh, so that's not something somebody's done to them?
No, if it was freshly struck, you'd expect to see, a really sharp feather edge.
Mm. It must be incredibly exciting to realise that you have actually got in situ pristine archaeology here.
Fantastic, especially when we had no idea that there was this much here. There's never a time you walk up here where it doesn't strike you. It's always exciting.
This site is so iconic and famous, but I think in some ways that distracts from its real importance, which is that the Neanderthals were coming back here to this cave over tens of thousands of years. It holds out the promise of really understanding how Neanderthals adapted to this changing climate in Europe during the Ice Age. But back to the present, and the tide is rising really rapidly. So if we don't get out of here, we're going to get stuck.
Over 250,000 individual stone tools have been found at Lacotte, more than all the other Neanderthal sites in Britain combined. Becky and Matt have arranged for some of the best to be brought down to the beach. They can demonstrate just how sophisticated the Neanderthals really were.
You've got artefacts here from a very long period of time. What do they tell us about the Neanderthals?
What's interesting about this collection as a whole is there's a lot of flint in it, which these artefacts are here, and there's no flint on the island. The nearest source of flint is perhaps 20 kilometres away.
So they're probably following animals here, and they're arriving in a place where there's not brilliant stone for making stone tools, so they're having to bring that in from elsewhere.
There is flint around here. It is in the beaches, but it's useless. They're discriminating. They're not touching that. They know where the good raw material sources are.
The Neanderthals certainly weren't primitive brutes. These tools show real sophistication and intelligence.
This one is particularly beautiful.
Yeah, this is actually part of a much bigger piece, but I don't recognise the raw material at all. So this is something very exotic.
I mean, that's beautiful. It's been really carefully manufactured.
What's also interesting about this piece is it comes from the very early excavations that took place in the upper part of the cave. And these may have been some of the last Neanderthals in this landscape.
So that, to me, suggests somebody who's not only good at making something that's very functional, but they've got an eye for beauty as well.
It doesn't look like a technology of people on the edge. And that's another thing we need to really focus on. Neanderthals, if they, compared to humans, lacked ability, if they lacked the ability to make tools, lacked the ability to think, they would have been extinct before they'd even started. Nature just doesn't allow a creature that isn't perfectly fit to its environment to thrive and exist.
My 100,000-year-long journey ends here with these surprising truths about the sophistication and achievements of the Neanderthals. Along the way, I've seen so much fresh evidence of ingenuity and invention. I've also seen exciting new discoveries being made and tiny clues uncovered that are all adding to the complex jigsaw puzzle that is ancient Britain.
In many ways, the Stone Age seems unimaginably distant from us, and the voices of our ancient ancestors have long since faded into silence. But archaeology helps us to piece their stories together, revealing how they lived, how they viewed their world, and showing us how the foundations of our modern society emerged. And so, with many questions still unanswered, the digging continues.